Hey everybody, thanks for watching. And just a quick reminder, I received you guys emails. Please do not send any more emails. I got you guys requests to extend the sale for another weekend. So the sale is up right now for Merkabah catalog. So this will be the weekend. It's like over 1,000 of you who sent emails. Please don't send any more. The sale is here. It's extended until Monday. So take advantage. So another thing, remember, that the links will expire. So if the link expires, make sure you just use that same link you got in your email to request more download time from the download site. So that's all you got to do. If you run out of space, it doesn't matter. If anything happens, it doesn't matter. You will always be able to go back and request more download time from the download site. If for some reason they won't let you get more time, send us an email, then we will manually send you a link, but just request more time for, more download time, and you'll get it. Just be patient. Even if you make a request, if it takes a second, you will get an email with the link, and appreciate your patience and support on that. But yes, it's extended for this weekend until Monday. So please take advantage. To everybody who sent emails, please don't send any more emails. Got you guys. So it's up. It's up right now. So let's get into this video. Told you guys I'm going to put out a lot more information. There is a lot of people, growing amount of people who are very interested in Bible information and understanding the hidden stuff in the Bible. This is something that I said would happen. I said eventually it will come a time where they start parlaying the facts, the real truth about the Bible into the Bible and saying, well, wait a minute. This is all esoteric stuff. Now, you're beginning to see preachers talk about the esoteric nature of the Bible and how this stuff is parables and how it's hidden. And they still dare not to say that Jesus is a parable, that he is not real and he means something different. But they're starting to recognize that these are allegories and these stories are things that can't be real. So this video is basically for a group of people, Christians, who I've been talking to, who can't understand the validity of the Bible, but they don't understand the role that the Greeks played. And this is one of those things to where if you're not looking, you will not find it. So big topic of discussion about the Greeks' role in this whole thing. And it's the same thing with the Black Hebrews. They don't want to see the Greeks' role in the Bible. And the whole thing it's not hard, because when you get real with yourself, you're going to come to a point where you start to try to find Bible history in real history. You won't find it. So the next thing you do is try to find what history is identical to what we're seeing in the Bible. Is there any people that did anything that the Hebrew Israelites did that maybe they could be, possibly confusing, or taking a story from something else and, putting it to the Hebrews. So this is like critical thinking. This is real research you have to do, because if you believe that this book is just like people really believing in it, and it's just, how could somebody make up something so long ago and it sticks so long? What is it about the book that people are holding on to? Like, what is going on? Because it's that keeps people stuck in the book. They just can't fathom how long this has been going on, that the powers that be and people in higher places and researchers could not have figured this out yet, as far as what we've figured out. So to them, it's like, you don't know what you're talking about. These people would have figured it out a long time ago. How come we haven't heard about this? When people look at Greek history, to think about Greek mythology, to think about the Greek gods, and of course, everything was about the Greek gods. And why would they even get into anything having to do with the Old Testament or Jesus or Moses and so on and so forth? Everything with the Greeks is about Greek mythology. But as I've shown you guys, and when you go and look, you will see it. You will see where the biblical parts of Greek mythology that they believe Greek mythology has taken from, the biblical text. You will see where you can compare it and how it's the same and where the stuff comes from. This is stuff we went into. But this is for these people. I know you guys watching. So check this out. And anybody who's into this information, we're going to get into a couple videos to really get a deeper understanding of this. And it's not hard to accept or see when you do the actual research. So again, you go back to the whole whoever smelt it dealt it thing. Like I said, when you go and trace back the Bible to its origin, you will find the Greeks. This is something I always talk about. And the Greeks is the one who gave us the Septuagint. But everybody says, well, no, they got it from the Hebrews. But we go back to LXX, the letters of Orestes, and we go back to these supposedly 72 Hebrew elders, 6 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, who supposedly came to Alexandria, Egypt, to give us a translation of the Hebrew law from Hebrew to Greek. This is what LXX is talking about. This is how we supposedly get the Septuagint, which Septuagint means 70. Go through this a lot. So with that understanding, we don't have any proof that this happened. We don't have any proof that they found these, 72 elders. There's no proof. There's no proof. We have fragments of the Septuagint. We don't have the original. We never had it. So again, when you go back to the beginning of the Bible, it starts with the Greeks. So we know the Septuagint was written in Greek. We know that the New Testament is also written in Greek, and that most of the translations that we get, or basically all of the translations that we get, is coming from Greek manuscripts. So even people who want to go into the whole Ethiopian Bible, the whole Abba-Garima version. Remember, Abba-Garima was a Byzantine royal who gave the Ethiopians the Bible. He copied it from a Greek manuscript. So people say, well, we did have a Bible before slavery. It wasn't that the white man gave us the Bible. We had a Bible before slavery in Ethiopia. But you have to understand what they have at the Abba-Garima monastery. It's copied from a Greek text. Understand this. So you can't get the Masoretic text, which is, the first proven book after, we can say after the Dead Sea Scrolls, supposedly. But you get the Masoretic text written in Hebrew. And again, there's no proof that we ever had any Hebrew manuscript that predates the Septuagint Greek. Let's get that out of the way. So now you got to get into how we can find things in the Bible that fits, real history. And again, this is where we come into the Greek. So to just, long story short, get to the point. So we have Hebrews going out, conquering, killing people, slaughtering all over. And the Bible was talking about God gave them the Ark of the Covenant and all its power, so on and so forth. And they're going out and they're conquering. Now, you can't find this in real history. If they're doing all this conquering, Moses part the sea, and they're going out and they slaughtering the Amorites and the Girgashites and the Perishites and the Hivites and all that. Where's the proof? There should be some type of documentation or some type of, written historical record of these battles. Something. There's nothing. So the only people who we find who was going out and doing, conquering on this level is the Greeks. So again, you go back to when the Greeks take over Egypt from the Persians, and then Alexander dies. Then you have the wars of the Diadochi. And then you have this long war where they basically spreading Hellenization, and they're going throughout Europe and Northern Africa and basically taking the indigenous lands from those indigenous people. So in the Bible, when it's talking about the Hebrews going out and killing all these tribes, those tribes were African tribes that was already settled in Europe and Northern Africa. And these are the only people in actual history that we can find anything that resembles what we read in the Bible as far as conquest at that time. So when you look at real actual history, it's the Greeks who you'll find, nobody else. But the Bible also gives you clues, and they're telling you about, this power and these people who's basically going to be going out and conquering. So we got into this, and this is Ancient History Volume 1. Take a look. But in this case, the key here is Tyrus or Tyre. So you have to understand it's the same place talking about the same thing. As you can see here, this is what it basically looked like on the map. We're going to deal a lot with this place. There's a lot of history wrapped up in here. It's unbelievable. And we're going to get into it. Let's read. The Phoenicians, city of Tyre, a rich history of industry, mythology, and conflict. According to tradition, the city of Tyre was founded in 2750 BC and is considered one of the world's oldest metropolises. Think about that. For much of its history, Tyre has played an important role in the region. The Tyrians were master seafarers and explorers. By sailing around the Mediterranean, the Tyrians made contact with other civilizations and founded colonies. As a result, Tyre had a special place in a number of ancient Mediterranean communities. Greek mythology states Europa, for whom the continent of Europe was named, you see where we're going, was a Phoenician princess of Tyre who was abducted by Zeus in the form of a bull and brought to the island of Crete. On the island, Zeus revealed his identity, and Europa became the first queen of Crete. One of Europa's brothers was Cadmus, who, according to legend, brought the alphabet to mainland Greece. In addition, the Tyrians also founded colonies, the most famous of which is Rome's greatest rival, Carthage. It is believed that this city was founded by another Tyrian princess, Dido, who left Tyre to escape her evil husband. It is said that when she arrived in North Africa, she requested a small piece of land from the Berber king, Larbus, and subsequently founded Carthage. The story of Dido is most vividly portrayed in Virgil's Aeneid. So we're talking about Tyre or Tyrus, and you see how they do it. In the Bible, you got Tyrus, but it's really Tyre, Tyrus, Tyre. You know, when you see one of the names, it's talking about the same place, a city in Phoenicia. Now, understand one, of course, Phoenicia is basically, modern day, today is Lebanon. But we understand this is where Europa comes from, which Europa gives us Europe. So again, you see where we are headed. We're talking about Europe, we're talking about the Europeans. Huge history going on here that we're going to get into. So understand one, of course, this land, didn't belong to the Phoenicians. You got to understand what the Phoenicians is. This was clearly part of Egyptian territory when you understand the Egyptian kingdom. It was part of the Egyptian empire, that land for a long time. Don't let history fool you. We're going to get into this. But it was a part of Egyptian territory. Now, the name Phoenician was given to it, by the Greeks. The Greeks is the one who named it Phoenician, or, the Phoenicians. And it comes from the Greek word phonikos. So Phoenician comes from the Greek word phonikos, which means purple people. Phonikos, purple people. So this is where we get Phoenician. And what are the purple people? They call them purple people. One, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, we get so black, we can look purple. That's not it. But Phonikos or Phoenician, that purple people thing, comes from the morax. The morax is basically a shellfish or like a sea slug kind of sort of. Basically, it emits this purple dye that is very strong. It doesn't just wash off or come off. So a lot of people, wanted to use it because it actually got stronger in the sun, So if you use that purple dye, it actually got stronger. So this is why they call them purple people, because the people who worked in there, getting these shells out in the water, of course, the dye would cover them up and it would be like purple, when they came out. So Phoenician comes from Phonikos, and the Greeks are the one who came up with that name. So now most people, when they think about the Phoenicians, when they think about that land, some people think about the Persians, think about Arabs, some people think about Europeans being there. A lot of people, when they think about the Phoenicians, don't take it back to black people. And this is one of the problems. There's a lot of debates when people start getting into ancient Phoenician. Who was the Phoenicians? Who was the Phoenicians? Was they black? Was they white? What have you? And you can understand why when you start going into that history, especially when you see the Greeks talk about in their mythology getting a language, which we'll get into that. But a lot of people don't, associate it with African people or black people. But the land was clearly Egyptian territory, plain and simple. You go there and you have the Temple of Obelisk and Byblos. Now, when you go to Byblos, you have the Temple of Obelisk, still stand to this day. We're talking dating over, 1000 BCE. And the temple's still there. You can see it's all these obelisks, all these little, statues or what have you there, as well as other Egyptian artifacts and Egyptian sites there. It's one of the tourist attractions when you go there. Now, you start going back over, you can see, not too far away is Tyre, the city of Tyre. Not that far. You keep going over more, and guess what else you run into? You run into Israel. You keep going over, of course, more, and of course, Egypt. All of this was Egyptian territory. Of course, they had all this land, all this space. There's going to be a lot of, things that you research and see that's going to try to fit biblical history within there. Whenever you see that, keep reading because you need to know the bullshit, but it's bullshit, plain and simple. But this was Egyptian territory, the stuff that's there, which they won't dare get rid of because they make money off it, as a tourist attraction, is still there to prove who the area belonged to. Now you have to think about something, because you have the Phoenician alphabet, you have Egyptian, and of course they're different. We're going to get into that as well. But you have to realize what the Phoenician territory was, what Tyre was, what that area was. Since it's on that coast and you have the only other way that you can get in there, if you're Greece or what have you and you're trying to come there, this is the place where you would have to land, as far as a ship. So if you're going to be doing trade or anything with people in that area, like Syria, what have you, Lebanon, Israel, you need a closer port, which that port would be the closest port. So what the Egyptians did was they basically left that port open. They left Tyre basically open, that city, and that whole area up to Byblos. All that area was basically like an open seaport where you had so many different countries coming in there trading. They was trading, they had a lot of merchants there. There was a lot of marketplaces. They had goods that was bringing into other countries. This is what everybody talks about. It's well known. Tyre is well known. A lot of people talk about it. A lot of historians talk about it. But everybody know it as the people who was living there was like, fishermen and real seafaring people who traveled out, who knew everybody. So it's even in the Bible. So when you read in Acts 21:3, it says, now when we had discovered Cyprus, which we know Cyprus is right there, we left it on the left hand and sailed into Syria. Now, I don't know how the map was back then, but you can't sail into Syria, easily today, and landed in Tyre, for there the ship was to unload her burden. In other verses, it says unload her cargo. So they just, King James Version, kept it old school. But it says to unload her cargo, of course. Now, as I said, you're going to read a lot of stuff. You're going to start reading stuff about the Philistines and the Hebrew Israelites, some kind of war and all this kind of drama going on. It's bullshit. All of this is there to give validity to the Bible, plain and simple. We understand what happened in history. This was Egyptian land. What happened? We know who conquered that area was the Persians. So when you look at this little relief here, what it say down here, it says 500 BCE or the 5th century BCE, excuse me. Of course, we know in the 5th century, this is around the time when, the Persians took that land. So you see clearly, one, when you just look at recorded history, it all matches up. That's just one of the things we're going to go through in this video. And you're going to see recorded history matching up with the Bible, debunking the Bible. As I said, there's no way you can read the book. And if you read the book and you know history, game. Plain and simple. This is why they have to hide history, why they have to distort it. But that area clearly, belonged to the Egyptians. Now, of course, because, Phoenicia was an actual place, you find a lot of artifacts around that area from the Phoenicians. You go into Spain, you find from the Phoenician period in Spain, artifacts in Spain. But of course, the Phoenician period was the Egyptian period because they were Egyptians. But you find artifacts pertaining to the Phoenicians throughout the area, the so-called Middle East. And we can find this stuff. This is how we know these people were real. They actually existed because this was a trading port and so many people was coming in and out and buying goods, Egyptian stuff as well. And we can find this stuff. This stuff exists. This is how we know. This is how when you do research in history, if we ain't finding it pertaining to the Hebrews, it's not, they didn't exist. It's not real. So when we look, we know the history. We know that, again, the Persians came in, conquered that Egyptian land, which Tyre was a part of the Egyptian territory. They came and they took it. Then we know that the Greeks came and took it from the Persians. So now what I talked about in the video on YouTube about the Hebrew Israelites, what I talked about, the Bible, as far as the Bible using its stories, the Bible they're trying to basically justify the genocide and slavery of African people. This is what the Bible was talking about. We talked about that in those videos, because the Bible was giving you all these stories about the conquest of these lands. And a lot of people don't realize, even though they hide them, with names, with different names, that these lands are pertaining to African people, the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Jebusites and all that stuff like that. It's talking about African land that they took and said that God, allowed them to take it. This is what it's pertaining to. So you got to understand the story. We know, again, Greeks came in there, took it from the Persians. So you got to understand Tyre was a huge city. You had Tyre, and you had Tyre, the mainland. And you had Tyre, you see the part that sticks out in the water, it was an island, unto itself for a while, for a long time. But you had, when the Greeks came in there, Alexander and his troops basically slaughtered everybody on the mainland, and they basically killed a bunch of people, and they enslaved whoever they could enslave. A lot of people bought their way out of the whole situation. Some people couldn't, but they basically, was recorded as them slaughtering so many people and completely destroying the city. I mean, decimating it. They came in with all kinds of, battering rams and stuff, and just basically laid the city to rubble. Then the people who, fled to the island. So you had the Phoenician people and the people who was there basically jump in their ships and go out to the island. A lot of people kept going, but the people who couldn't go anywhere else went to their home on the island. As you can see, it was, as I said, it was an island. So, for the next 7 months, Alexander and his troops went on killing and destroying, killing people, enslaving people, and destroying the city. But what they did was they used the rubble from the city to basically build a causeway from the mainland of Tyre to the island of Tyre. And in 7 months, they had that causeway built. And in 7 months, they went to their island and completely massacred about 30,000 people there. And the same situation occurred where some people bought their way out, some people couldn't, the rest got enslaved or got killed. So he finally did end up taking that island and killing a bunch of people. So you can see it now how it looks. The causeway is there, but it wasn't there before. And it is attributed to Alexander. This is something that everybody knows. The Romans have a monument there to this day, pertaining to Alexander. This is history, people. This is recorded history. And it doesn't fit with the Bible. So it's funny how, when we look at their book, this is how they try to hide, away from it and say that, oh, well, of course they're not going to say they wrote the book. But this is how we can look at actual recorded history and see it doesn't fit with what the Bible's saying. But we can read the Bible and get the clues and see that this is where they stole their stories from and put them in the Bible. But real history says something different. So again, when we go to Ezekiel, and understand, take note that this stuff is all in Ezekiel. When we talked about before, about Satan and all that stuff in Ezekiel as well. So we read in Ezekiel 26, 3 through 6, it says, "Therefore thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, O Tyrus," which Tyrus is Tyre, "and will cause many nations to come up against thee, as the sea causeth his waves to come up. And they shall destroy the walls of Tyrus and break down her towers. I will also scrape her dust from her and make her like the top of a rock. It shall be a place for the spreading of nets in the midst of the sea, for I have spoken it, saith the Lord God. And it shall become a spoil of the nations, and her daughters which are in the field shall be slain by the sword, and they shall know that I am the Lord." So we know it's all bullshit, but this is how you prove that the Greeks are the ones who created the Bible. This is how you prove it. One, who else would know about this history? Now, I just told you about the story about how Tyre was laid siege by Alexander, but then you read in the Bible, in Ezekiel, them talking about, God, the Lord, basically sending nations against Tyre. Now, we know there was nations that basically came up against Tyre. I won't say many nations, it was basically two, the Persians and the Greeks. So on the one hand, you have the Bible giving us the story of Tyre, but then you have actual recorded history talk about something completely different. So it's going to get even more deeper. We're going to decipher this thing real quick using the Bible and actual history. And it's easy Because the thing is, one, a lot of people read this stuff and get confused. But as I said, when you know the Bible and you know real recorded history, it's easy to break down, as I'm doing right here. But again, let's go to Ezekiel again. Ezekiel 26:7 says, "For thus saith the Lord God, behold, I will bring upon Tyrus Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, a king of kings from the north, with horses and with chariots and with horsemen and companies and much people." There is no proof of a Nebuchadnezzar coming into Tyre and basically laying siege to the place. There's no proof. We're going to bust it up in a second to prove the point. So understand, one, when I talked about before, when you hear about the Philistines and the Hebrew Israelites, what have you, in Tyre, it's all bullshit. They're trying to create this faulty timeline, again, to try to make it an inconsistency in the rulership of Kemet. Because if they can do that in the rulership of Kemet and the Egyptian territory, then they can interject, they people in history. Because remember, they got to fit themselves in history somehow, some way. They got to try to fit themselves in there. By them saying, well, the Egyptians didn't always rule this land, but they did. Because we know we can prove it. But they'll admit that the Egyptians did rule Phoenicia. But they say, well, it was off and on, off and on. But the Egyptians, being the cool people that they is, basically said, all right, we own this territory. We basically teaching y'all anyway. Let's just use this land, because the Egyptians was basically neutral because they work with everybody. Let's use this land so nobody won't feel cheated, and let these people come in and use this land as a port. Again, Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark and them talked about how much good the Egyptians did for everybody. Even when people go and look at the artifacts and the history of that land, they see it pertain to many people. But everybody it goes back to the Egyptians. So when they find a lot of the artifacts from, the Phoenician times, it goes back to many different countries, different people, because the Egyptians let so many people win there. So, all the Greeks had to do was take real history and distort it. Stuff that you can go back and kind of say, maybe it's possible, cast doubt, conceal it, distort it, so they can kind of interject, history in there. And this is exactly what they did. So it's saying that Nebuchadnezzar, God sent Nebuchadnezzar there to basically destroy the city. Now, bullshit. Prove it. Prove that Nebuchadnezzar came there and destroyed it. Can't prove that, especially when we have already recorded history, proven history of Alexander destroying the place. So again, Bible says one thing, proven history says something else. Nobody can prove that he came in there. It's not possible. So the thing is this, and again, this is how you bust open history, or bust open the Bible by understanding history. Again, one, the only Nebuchadnezzar, because there's a bunch of them, the only Nebuchadnezzar that could have been close to the time that this happened with the destruction of Tyrus, either one, the only Nebuchadnezzar that could have been there during that time was Nebuchadnezzar II. But he died in the 6th century BCE, which is long before the destruction of Tyre. So that's the only Nebuchadnezzar that can be even close to that time in actual history. So we know, no, it wasn't Nebuchadnezzar. So again, this is how you touch the Bible. Now, this is important. And the way that we prove this is, one, to go back to the Bible, to Ezekiel. Ezekiel 26:14. Remember, it says, "And I will make thee like the top of a rock. Thou shalt be a place to spread nets upon. Thou shalt be built no more." This is the so-called prophecy of Ezekiel. Thou shalt be built no more. For I, the Lord, have spoken it, saith the Lord God. Now, the only time that Tyre was destroyed to where it was built no more began with Alexander. And we're talking about the 4th century BCE. Long after that Nebuchadnezzar, that's close to this time frame, had died already. So we're talking the 4th century BCE. So that's important because ever since Alexander destroyed the place, you had the Romans coming later and basically take it from the Greeks, and they built on it, and then that got torn down by the Arabs. So this ruin that I showed you with the basically the temple of the obelisk or what have you is ruins. That whole area is a tourist attraction to this day. It's still in ruins. It's nothing built on there. You can see the remnants of Rome there, the remnants of Greece there, the remnants of the ancient Egyptians, but it has never been rebuilt, the city that was destroyed. So this is the so-called prophecy, which again, it's one of those prophecies where it's bullshit. What's to stop anybody from going there, the government from going there right now and rebuilding the place. Now, one, is a landmark, so they can't do it. So this is how you fulfill the prophecy. Oh, we're making a landmark, nobody can build there. But nothing ain't really stopping people from building except for humans, men. This ain't God or no angels stopping people from building. It's permits, laws, legal shit that can be fixed by humans. So it's not no real prophecy. So understand, again, this is how you fix that whole thing. This is how you figure that whole thing out. We know, one, it's not Nebuchadnezzar because he wasn't alive during that time. Two, the prophecy, its own prophecy in the Bible, only fits around the time when Alexander in real history actually destroyed the place. So again, all the Greeks had to do, because remember, the King James Version was written between 1604 and 1611. So all they had to do was basically, they know the history, they know what happened, was put this in the book. They understand recorded history is already documented by many people. All they had to do was put it in the book, distort it, and make it as if, it fits with biblical history. Because when you go back during that time, you can say, well, such a thing happened. I guess it's talking about them. No, this is actual history. So we know it's bullshit when it's talking about Nebuchadnezzar. Now, another one of the daggers that basically gives it away we can find in the Bible. Again, talking about Alexander. The only person this fits is Alexander. So when you read again in Ezekiel 26:12 says, and they shall make a spoil of thy riches, and make a prey of thy merchandise, and they shall break down thy walls, and destroy thy pleasant houses. As I said, Alexander destroyed the houses, and they shall lay thy stones, and thy timber, and thy dust in the midst of the water. Okay, so who did that? We know it's talking clearly about Alexander and about how he tore down the cities. He took the rubble, he took the trees, took everything and built that causeway to get to the island. It's right there in the Bible. But does it talk about Alexander? No. It's trying to divert you away from actual history, because if you follow actual history, it'll lead you to the truth, of course.